When I became a sniper, I met a colleague of mine whom I had heard about before. He was already a well-known sniper on the Eastern Front, a native of Nuremberg and my age. Just like me, he got the idea of becoming a sniper after he had captured a Russian sniper rifle. We hit it off right away. The battalion commander was well aware of how valuable competently deployed snipers were in combat, and gave us complete freedom of action. While the others dug trenches and prepared defenses, we decided to jointly reconnoiter enemy movements and work together. It was clear to us that 2 pairs of trained eyes would see much more than one. The next day at about 8 o'clock in the morning, a bullet suddenly whizzed among the German soldiers fortifying their positions, and the soldier struck by it collapsed to the ground, twitching and screaming convulsively. With the speed of light, the others rushed for cover. Only one of the infantrymen stayed with the wounded man a few seconds longer than he should have. He hardly heard the thud of the bullet, which entered the back of his head just opposite his left eye and exited through his right eye, leaving a hole the size of his fist. As he fell, a yellowish mass of blood and brains oozed out through the hole. There was a warning shout of sniper attack. The helpless sentries unleashed a hail of machine gun fire in the direction where they assumed the enemy was, but this was to no avail, as became clear when an aimed shot took out one of the machine gunners. We were in our dugout when a liaison burst into it, and panting, reported a sniper attack. Hearing this, the battalion commander simply told us snipers, "You know your job, fix the problem." Moving quickly, but making use of every cover, we, together with the liaison man, hurried to the front line. He led us to a section of the trench, the erection of which was already completed. There we were warmly welcomed by the commander. He immediately reported to us the events of the last few minutes. The trench we were in ended on one side with a well-camouflaged observation position in a thicket. We were able to move there unnoticed and began scouring the terrain for the Russian sniper's hideout. However, no matter how hard we strained our eyes, we could see nothing suspicious, even looking with special attention at the spot from which the first of our comrades had been killed. Hours passed, and there was no result. We discussed what position we ourselves would have taken if we had been a Russian sniper. But even in places that seemed ideal, we did not observe the slightest sign of movement. About noon, another soldier was caught in the crosshairs of a Russian sniper. A bullet hit his helmet as he was throwing a tin can over the edge of the trench. This time the sniper's victim was lucky. The bullet ricocheted off his helmet and entered his forearm. Fortunately, the Russian sniper did not use bursting bullets, although snipers more often fired bursting bullets, and the German infantryman got only a through wound. We were looking through binoculars in the direction of the Russian positions at the time, and we both saw a patch of grass swaying as if from the pressure of powder gases from the sniper's rifle. We marveled at the ingenuity of our adversary. He had perfectly camouflaged himself in a burrow dug under an earth embankment. But now the question was whether he was experienced enough to leave his position, or whether he remained in it. The latter option seemed more likely, based on the fact that all his shots came from the same direction. So we decided to provoke the Russian into sticking it out. We settled on the idea that one of our comrades should trick him with a fake target. My partner was to take up a position 50 meters from me, and we were both to fire at the enemy's supposed position as soon as the grass there shook from his shot. We stuffed a dry bag with grass and put it on a stick, with a cap on top. We gave the resulting scarecrow to a comrade and told him to carefully stick it out over the trench in exactly 10 minutes. Both snipers prepared themselves and aimed at the supposed enemy position. At exactly the appointed time, the cap of our scarecrow peeked out of the trench. The stratagem had worked. The Russian fired too early, not calculating that he might be trapped, and from the same position. He barely had time to pull the trigger when we fired on him, almost simultaneously. Our Russian sniper rifles were loaded with burst bullets, though we didn't have too many of those. We looked carefully through our scopes at the earthen embankment. Suddenly we noticed feverish activity behind it, as if something was being carried away from there. A puzzled Soviet observer with binoculars peeked out. He instantly paid with his life for his carelessness. bullets from 2 German snipers simultaneously entered his head, which exploded like an overripe pumpkin. Only his binoculars remained unharmed lying on the edge of the trench. Now the Russians could not leave their hiding places, and the German infantrymen could finish digging their trenches without interference. And in general, the enemy had a lot of snipers. It was a special Russian tactic that surprisingly had its origins in German influence. After World War I, the 2 former adversaries became allies. It was a marriage of convenience of sorts. After the chaos of the revolution, Russia was on its knees technologically and economically, while Germany was prevented from developing military technology by the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. Although the countries were political opponents, their governments yielded to the force of necessity. The Germans transferred their production technology and industrial equipment to Russia, receiving in return the opportunity to develop and test their new military equipment in Russia. In particular, close cooperation was seen in the development of combat vehicles and aircraft. A minor part of the deal, as it seemed at the time, was that Germany also provided the Russians with technological and tactical information to develop effective optical sights and improve the Russian art of marksmanship. Until then, the Russians had not used telescopic sights. Subsequently, the Wehrmacht relied on a highly mobile army and paid little attention to the development of infantry weapons and tactics. Meanwhile, the young Soviet army, because of its limited means, focused on the latter. Examples of its progressive achievements include semi-automatic weapons, anti-tank rifles, and multi-barrel mortars. And while the German army continued to use old pre-war telescopic sights until 1940, the Red Army developed modern sniper weapons and trained huge numbers of snipers. Russian snipers operated alone, in teams of sniper and observer, sniper pairs, or even entire squads of up to 60 snipers. From the beginning of the Russian campaign, the Soviets suffered significant losses from the advancing Wehrmacht forces, especially among officers and leadership. But they succeeded many times in delaying the German advance for several days, despite the lack of heavy guns. However, the Germans, in the euphoria of the victories of the early months of the campaign, discounted the Russian snipers and ignored the hidden threat they posed. But in 1942, as the war became more static and the Germans increasingly had to shift to defensive action, the problem became more apparent and required an urgent solution. The shortage of telescopic sights in the German army was by then critical. The introduction of telescopic sights with 1.5 times magnification was clearly an inadequate measure, as they were of little use for accurate shooting from distant ranges. Before Germany was able to start producing more powerful telescopic sights, the army had to find other ways out of the situation. German fighters, like myself, used sniper rifles captured from the Russians. Also in Germany there was a collection of hunting weapons with telescopic sights, and they were sent to the front. The few sniper rifles available from barracks and police were also collected and became the first weapons of the Wehrmacht snipers. Guidelines on telescopic sighted weapons and the use of snipers began to appear in late 1942, but the first official instructions were not issued until May 1943. In the last quarter of 1943, the Wehrmacht began organizing sniper schools in its largest training camps. There, in courses lasting only 4 weeks, specially selected soldiers tried to prepare them for the difficult job of sniper. The soldiers who attended the course were a mix of newly enlisted recruits and seasoned fighters with extensive frontline experience, characterized by their officers as potential snipers. Everyone who turned out for the course received the necessary specialized training in addition to a sniper rifle. The snipers who were being trained were trained at a military camp in Austria near Judenburg. When I arrived at the boot camp and entered the room, my gaze was drawn to the framed text on the wall. It was written in Gothic letters. The sniper is a hunter among soldiers. His service is hard and completely consumes his body and mind. Only a fully confident and unwavering fighter can become a sniper. There is only one possibility to defeat the enemy: to learn to hate and pursue him, putting all the strength of his soul into it. Being a sniper is a rewarding experience for a soldier. He fights while remaining invisible. His strength is his Indian-like use of terrain combined with superior camouflage, feline quickness, and mastery of his weapons. Mastery of these skills keeps him safe, superior, and ensures his victory. I was caught up in these pathetic words, and I felt a certain pride. But it was immediately muted by my knowledge of the realities of war and its ruthlessness. At the same time, something inside me broke, and I thought, if you know what a real war is, if you almost died, then statements like this are absolutely useless for you. We were also shown a movie about sniper training. To our surprise, the movie was Russian with German subtitles. It was made back in 1935 and showed the high level of Russian training. Before watching it, our instructor said, "Watch it carefully, they are very good at this." Their snipers caused us a lot of problems already during our offensive at the beginning of the war, and there was nothing we could do about it. We didn't even know how to spell the word sniper. The losses among our officers were catastrophic. When we didn't have heavy guns, Russian snipers stopped us for days. We tried to do something with captured sniper rifles, but those pigs knew their business. We had to learn from our mistakes. Eventually I found a worthy adversary, too. You can see where he hit me. I'm damn lucky to be alive. With those words, the instructor bent his head so that everyone could see the huge scar near his left eye socket, which now contained a glass eye. It was a gesture of fate and a big advertisement for Zeiss. A Russian sniper's bullet bounced off my binoculars and I only lost an eye, not my life. Keep in mind that the enemy has professionals too. I'll give you one important piece of advice. Run away as soon as you notice that an enemy sniper is after you. In this case, you have only one thing to do: change your position after each shot. You must get it into your heads that a sniper makes a mistake only once. Having made a mistake, in 90% of cases he dies. So greedily catch every useful piece of advice you hear. It may save your asses one day. As mentioned before, almost all the trainers at the school were former snipers who could no longer participate in combat due to serious injuries. But they were able to do the important job of passing on their experience and knowledge to the newcomers.